Have you ever wondered why flowers are so colorful or why fruits are so sweet? You might think it's for us, but the real story is much older and involves a silent, millennia-long conversation between plants and animals. Today, we're diving deep into the incredible evolutionary journey of plants and how their relationship with the animal kingdom shaped the world as we know it. Before plants made their grand entrance onto land, our planet was a very different place. The continents were barren, rocky landscapes. The air had less oxygen. Life was almost entirely confined to the oceans. But around 470 million years ago, a group of brave green algae decided to take a leap of faith. They were the pioneers, the first plants to colonize land. Life on land was tough. These early plants, similar to modern mosses and liverworts, had to deal with drying out harsh UV radiation and finding a way to reproduce without being surrounded by water. They were small and stayed close to the ground, hugging damp environments. For millions of years, they were the undisputed rulers of the terrestrial world, quietly transforming the planet. They released oxygen, created the first soils, and paved the way for everything that would follow. Then, around 400 million years ago, a revolution happened. The vascular system, think of it like a plant's internal plumbing. Specialized tissues called xylem and phloem allowed plants to transport water from the ground up to their leaves and sugars, from their leaves down to their roots. This was a game changer. Plants could now grow tall, reaching for the sunlight and outcompeting their neighbors. This led to the first forests, dominated by giant ferns and clubmosses. The world was becoming a much greener place. At the same time, animals were making their own journey onto land. Early invertebrates, like millipedes and scorpion-like arachnids, followed the plants, finding a new world of food and shelter. This was the beginning of a beautiful, and sometimes brutal, relationship. As soon as plants arrived on land, they became a food source. This animal pressure sparked an evolutionary arms race. To avoid being eaten, plants developed defenses. They created tough woody stems that were hard to chew. They produced chemicals that tasted bitter or were even toxic. Some developed sharp spines, and thorns are clear do not eat sin. You see these defenses everywhere today, from the thorns on a rosebush to the spicy kick in a chili pepper. That spiciness is actually a chemical called capsaicin, designed to deter mammals from eating the fruit. But the relationship wasn't all about conflict. It was also about cooperation. One of the biggest challenges for land plants was reproduction. Their aquatic ancestors released sperm into the water to find an egg. On dry land, that wasn't going to work. Early land plants relied on wind and water splashes, which is a bit of a lottery. Then came the insects. As insects evolved, some started feeding on the pollen of early seed plants like cycads. Pollen is packed with protein, making it a great food source. In the process of moving from plant to feed, these insects would accidentally carry pollen with them, fertilizing the plants. The plants that were better at attracting these insects were more successful. This accidental partnership became one of the most powerful forces in evolution. About 130 million years ago, a new kind of plant appeared, the flowering plant, or angiosperm. Flowers are, essentially, brilliant advertisements. They evolved bright colors, enticing scents, and sugary nectar rewards, all to attract specific animal pollinators. Think about the intricate dance between a bee and a flower. The bee gets a high-energy meal of nectar, and in return, it carries pollen directly to another flower of the same species. This is far more efficient than leaving it to the wind. This coevolution led to an explosion of diversity. You have long, tubular flowers for hummingbirds with their long beaks, and large, sturdy flowers for beetles. It's a perfect example of mutual benefit. After successful pollination, the next challenge is to spread the seeds. You don't want your babies growing right underneath you, competing for the same sunlight and water. Again, plants turn to their animal partners for help. They encase their seeds in delicious, nutritious packages we call fruits. The strategy is simple but genius. An animal, like a bird or a mammal, eats the fruit. The sweet, fleshy part provides a good meal. The tough seeds pass through the animal's digestive system unharmed. Then, sometime later, and likely far away from the parent plant, the animal deposits the seed in a new location. complete with a little pile of fertilizer to help it get started. This is why so many fruits are brightly colored reds, yellows, and purples stand out against green foliage, signaling to animals that a tasty meal is ready. The sweetness is the reward. This partnership allowed flowering plants to spread across the globe with incredible speed, becoming the dominant form of plant life on Earth. From the apple you eat to the coffee you drink, you are participating in this ancient pact between plants and animals. So, the next time you admire a beautiful flower, bite into a juicy strawberry, or even get pricked by a thorn, remember the epic story behind it. It's a story of struggle, innovation, and a profound partnership that began hundreds of millions of years ago. The green world around us wasn't built in isolation. It was co-created, piece by piece, through a constant dialogue between the plant and animal kingdoms. This intricate web of life is what makes our planet so vibrant and resilient. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through plant evolution. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about the wonders of the natural world, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure. See you next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're embarking on an incredible journey through time, exploring one of the most important stories on our planet, the evolution of plants. It's a tale of survival, innovation, and conquest that literally changed the world. So, picture Earth about 500 million years ago. The oceans were teeming with life, but the land, it was a barren, rocky landscape. No trees, no flowers, not even a blade of grass. Then, something amazing happened. Tiny green algae, living at the water's edge, began to venture out. These weren't plants as we know them, but they were the pioneers. They faced huge challenges, drying out under the harsh sun, finding nutrients in the soil, and figuring out how to stand up against gravity. Over millions of years, they developed incredible solutions. They evolved a waxy coating called a cuticle to hold in water, like their own natural moisturizer. They developed simple root-like structures to anchor themselves and absorb nutrients. These were the first true land plants, like mosses and liverworts. They still needed to live in damp places, but they had made the leap. But the real game-changer came with the evolution of vascular tissue, an internal plumbing system of tubes called xylem and phloem. This was revolutionary. It allowed plants to transport water from the ground all the way up to their highest leaves, and to move sugars from the leaves to the rest of the plant. This innovation allowed plants to grow taller, competing for sunlight and spreading further inland. This is when the first forests of giant ferns and club masses began to dominate the landscape. Now, let's talk about the animal connection. As plants conquered the land, they created entirely new habitats and food sources. This green revolution paved the way for animals to follow. The first land animals were likely small invertebrates like millipedes and early insect-like creatures, who found a feast in the decaying plant matter and a place to shelter among the low-growing greenery. Devotion of plants directly fueled the evolution of land animals. As plants grew taller and more complex, they provided more food and more varied homes. This spurred the evolution of herbivores to eat the plants, and in turn, carnivores to eat the herbivores. Think about it. Without plants creating oxygen, providing food, and building habitats, the diverse animal life we see on land, including us, simply wouldn't exist. Our stories are completely intertwined. The next major breakthrough for plants was the seed. Before seeds, plants like ferns relied on spores, which needed water to reproduce. But a seed is like a tiny, self-contained survival pod. It has a protective coat, a food supply, and the plant embryo all packed together. This allowed plants to conquer even drier environments and wait for the perfect conditions to sprout. This led to the rise of the gymnosperms, like the majestic conifer spines and firs that could thrive in a wider range of climates. Finally, the most recent and perhaps most spectacular innovation, the flower. Appearing around 130 million years ago, flowers were a brilliant strategy for reproduction. By using colorful petals and sweet nectar to attract insects and other animals, plants could ensure their pollen was carried directly from one flower to another. This partnership with animals was incredibly efficient and led to an explosion of diversity. These flowering plants or angiosperms are now the most dominant group of plants on Earth, from the tiniest daisy to the mightiest oak tree. So, from a humble algae at the water's edge to vast forests and vibrant meadows, the evolution of plants is a story of incredible adaptation. They transformed a barren rock into the green, living world we know and depend on. They are the foundation of almost every ecosystem on land, shaping the very air we breathe and the food we eat. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into plant history. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more adventures into the natural world. Let me know in the comments which plant you find the most amazing. See you in the next video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving deep into the green world around us, but with a twist. We often think of plants as the silent, stationary backdrop to our planet's drama. But what if I told you they've been in a dynamic, evolutionary dance with animals for hundreds of millions of years? That's right, the story of plants is inseparable from the story of animals. Let's rewind the clock about 450 million years. The land was barren, rocky, and pretty much lifeless. Then, the first brave plants, ancestors of today's mosses and liverworts, made the leap from water to land. This was a monumental event. They were the pioneers, terraforming the planet. But they weren't alone for long. Soon after, the first land animals, tiny invertebrates like millipedes and early insect-like creatures, followed them ashore. Why? Because the plants were a brand new, untouched buffet. These early herbivores started munching on the primitive greenery, and this was the opening act of an epic evolutionary arms race. As plants evolved, they had to get clever to avoid being eaten. They developed tougher tissues, woody stems, and eventually, things like thorns and spines. Think about a rose's, thorns, or a cactus's spikes. These are ancient defense mechanisms. But it wasn't just physical. Plants also started producing a cocktail of chemical defenses. Compounds that tasted bitter, were toxic, or messed with an animal's digestion became their secret weapons. This chemical warfare pushed animals to adapt in response. Some herbivores evolved specialized digestive systems to neutralize these toxins, allowing them to feast on plants that were poisonous to others. A classic example is the monarch butterfly, whose caterpillars happily eat milkweed, a plant toxic to most other animals. They not only tolerate the toxins, but also store them in their bodies, making themselves toxic to predators. It's a brilliant, multi-level strategy that all started with a plant trying not to be lunch. Then came one of the most beautiful collaborations in nature's history, pollination. Around 130 million years ago, flowering plants or angiosperms burst onto the scene. Instead of just relying on the wind to spread their pollen, they enlisted the help of animals. They developed vibrant colors, enticing scents, and sugary nectar to attract insects, birds, and even bats. This was a game changer. Animals became flying couriers, delivering pollen directly from one flower to another with incredible efficiency. This partnership was so successful that it led to an explosion of diversity for both flowering plants and their pollinators. The intricate shapes of flowers often co-evolved to perfectly match the beak of a specific hummingbird or the tongue of a particular moth. It's a love story written in the language of evolution, but the relationship doesn't end with pollination. Plants also needed a way to disperse their seeds far and wide. Again, they turned to their animal partners. They wrapped their seeds in delicious, nutritious packages we call fruits. When a bird, a monkey, or even a bear eats a fruit, it often swallows the seeds. The animal then travels away and, well, poops out the seeds in a new location, complete with a little bit of fertilizer. This is how forests migrate and colonize new lands. Some plants got even more creative, developing seeds with hooks or burrs that hitch a ride on the fur of passing mammals. Every time you've had to pick a burr off your sock after a hike, you've participated in this ancient seed dispersal strategy. So, from the first bite taken by a millipede to the intricate dance of a bee in a flower, the evolution of plants and animals is a story of conflict and cooperation, of an arms race and a beautiful partnership. Plants aren't just the scenery, they are active players who have shaped, and been shaped by, the animal kingdom in countless fascinating ways. The world we see today, with its vibrant ecosystems and incredible biodiversity, is a direct result of this 450 million-year-old relationship. thick. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through time. If you found this as fascinating as I do, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next adventure. See you in the next video.